All right, y'all. I ain't gonna make this too long. Keep it short and sweet. So, yeah. So check this out. I was talking to somebody about going to a therapist, and I'm all for it. In 2018, I saw that I did some therapy. Yeah. 2016, I did some therapy. I think yeah. But those 2 years, I remember going to a therapist, and it was good. It was cool. Loved it. Thought it was great. So I advocate for it. But what I don't advocate is a codependent relationship on your therapist, right? Do not develop a codependent. Codependent means you can't live without the therapist. You know what I'm saying? And people got to understand this. Listen, uh, first of all, if you have trauma, if you have some deep trauma, uh, my advice on how to deal with trauma is not to don't. It's not so much to get rid of it, because the reality is you can't. That's the reality. And your therapist, these therapy people, because I've been to therapy, right? I know a lot of methods and techniques. They won't, whenever somebody tell you to let go of something, or to grow up and grow over, get over it, whatever, all that. The reality is you can't get rid of your trauma. That's the reality. And I know it sounds crazy, but let me back this up. It's biblical. Watch this. In the book of Corinthians, Paul goes to God, and he asked God not one time, not two times, but thrice, three times, to remove his thorn. Now, we know the Bible, like I said, is allegorical. A lot of it is allegorical, and a lot of it is symbolical. So allegories and symbols are what's, essentially the whole Bible is written in allegory and symbology. The thorn that Paul was talking about, it doesn't go into details as what it represents, or what his thorn specifically represented by the thorn, but the thorn is anything that bothers you. That's why a thorn is used. A thorn represents something that annoys you, a thorn in your flesh. It's something that annoys you, it's something that bothers you, hinders, prevents, it's something that disturbs you. It's something, anything that is not healthy to your overall well-being. So Paul asked God to remove the thorn, and here's the answer. This is interesting. God said, no, I'm not going to remove your thorn. My grace is sufficient. For when you're weak, that's when you're strong. And I'm paraphrasing. And God said, my strength is made perfect in your weakness. And then Paul's response was, I therefore boast in my weakness now. Because when I am weak, then I am strong. Or I'm paraphrasing, when I'm weak, then I rely upon the Lord for strength, depending on which version you're reading. But the easy explanation of that just simply means, when you have a thorn, a trauma, instead of trying to get rid of it, what you are to learn to do, based on what Paul in the Bible says, is learn to rely on God more, because the trauma ain't going nowhere. The thorn is not going anywhere. Paul said he went to God not just once, not just twice, but three times. And God said, no, my grace is sufficient. My grace is sufficient is mean God will allow you to still live, still thrive, in spite of whatever your trauma is. I'm going to say it again for those in the back. Your trauma, whatever it may be, your thorn in your flesh, God says, no, I'm not getting rid of it. What I will do is I will extend to you grace. Grace means favor that is undeserved. I will extend to you strength for you to thrive in spite of the trauma. Not in absence of the trauma, but in spite of the trauma. I'm saying that to say this, that a lot, like I said, a lot of these therapists, you got to understand this, right? You're bonding with your therapist. I get that. There's an emotional bonding that occurs and accompanies your sessions. Why? Because you're confiding in someone. You're vulnerable. You're on that couch and you're releasing all your childhood trash, garbage, drama, and you're crying, you're emotional. So you're bonding with the person, all the while not realizing this is purely a transactional event. This is purely a transactional experience that you're having. Your insurance company's cutting a check somewhere. You're possibly giving a copay. So at the end of the day, when you get out of his chair, someone else comes in and that transaction occurs all over again. So it's purely transactional, but we forget that because the underlying right? The underlying emotional connectivity that takes place subconsciously allows you to bond. So you start to feel almost as if it's family. There's a like I said, there's an emotional bonding that takes place, and you forget that this is purely a business transaction taking place between you and a therapist. Once you get off that couch, someone else replaces you, and when that person gets off the couch, someone else replaces. It's purely business transactional. So what? Why do I say that? To say this, it's not in the therapist's interest to fix you. It's in his interest to treat you. Not to cure you, not to make you better, not to make you whole. Because then guess what? That's one less insurance check that he's going to get and a copay. It's a business. So it's in his interest to keep you coming back. Give you enough to keep you coming back. And that's the business model for everything. It's the business model for, you know, the pharmaceutical companies. They're not going to cure you of your illness. The money's not in the cure, it's in the treatment. We've all heard that. So it's the same business model in various fields of the business world, right? So my thing is, when I went to my therapist in 2018, I remember in 2016, I was going through some difficult times and some challenging times around those times. And it was a divorce, just, yeah. And it was 2018 and 19, right? It was the end of 18, beginning of 19. And in 16, I went to therapy as well. That was just, I think I was stressed out. Wall Street, stock market stuff. I got sued. Yeah, it was the law. I got hit with a couple of lawsuits in terms of investment. So I was going through a lot. But when I went, I always had in the back of my mind that I just need to figure some stuff out and get back out into the real world. Right? Fix me up so I can get back out there and run. Right? Let me come in here, do whatever patchwork, psychological patchwork I need to do, and get back out on the battlefield. A codependent relationship with a therapist is actually perpetuating your illness. A codependent relationship with a therapist is actually a continuation of your illness as opposed to a solution to the problem. And a codependent relationship where 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. I know somebody personally. I'm talking about years and years and years of therapy. At some point, when do you come to the realization that, okay, I'm fixed now? Like I've solved this issue, right? Or I've figured it out and know how to move. In other words, when do we take the training wheels off the bike? You see what I'm saying? So again, I'm not here bashing therapy. I told you, I went to therapy, right? I'm not bashing men. I'm an advocate of mental illness. I got books that I've written about mental illness. Some of these degrees you see up here, the one on the far right there is ordination to be a minister, to be a pastor, to minister and administer Christian counseling. So I'm not against none of these things. What I'm saying is that we have to learn how to utilize the resources and not become dependent upon them. That's what I'm trying to say. Utilize the resource of a therapy. Utilize the resource of counseling, but don't become dependent upon them, because you're just continuing and perpetuating whatever you're struggling with. Because the goal is to get better. Go to the therapy, get better, go on about your life. Not go to the therapy and stay in the therapy for the rest of your life. That's just, again, showing you that you're not growing. Life is about growth, right? Find what your issues are. Accept your trauma. That's another thing I was going to say. I want to go over 10 minutes. I'm 9 minutes. All right, so I'm one more minute. So the thing is, embrace your trauma. Find what your trauma is. Don't try to get rid of the trauma. Learn how to utilize the trauma, to harness the trauma, to let the trauma galvanize you, motivate you. Again, thrive in spite of the trauma, not in its absence. Oh, I like that. I'm going to say it one more time for those in the back. Thrive in spite of your trauma, not in its absence. Till next time, peace.